In this video, we explore the chilling cases of America's most notorious serial killers, examining their crimes, last meals, and final words before their executions. Dr. H. Holmes, born Herman Webster Mudgett into a strict Methodist household in New Hampshire, 1861. But the boy who would become Dr. Henry Howard Holmes carried darkness from the start. When bullies forced him to touch a human skeleton at age 7, most children would be traumatized. Holmes was fascinated. Brilliant but twisted, Holmes earned his medical degree at the University of Michigan, where he perfected his first skill, deception. Stealing cadavers for insurance fraud was just the beginning. In 1886, Chicago beckoned. The World's Fair promised opportunity, and Holmes seized it. He married 3 women simultaneously while constructing his masterpiece, a 3-story murder castle in Englewood. Secret passages, soundproof rooms, gas chambers, a basement crematorium. Between 1891 and 1894, young women arrived seeking work at the World's Fair. They found death instead. Holmes lured them with job promises, then gassed them in sealed rooms or burned them alive. He sold their skeletons to medical schools and collected insurance money on their corpses. While he confessed to 27 murders, experts believe over 200 souls perished in his castle of horrors. November the 17th, 1894, arrested for insurance fraud involving Benjamin Pittisell, whom he'd murdered. The investigation unraveled his web of death. After 7 months on death row writing memoirs and giving contradictory interviews, Holmes faced the gallows on May 7, 1896. The execution was botched. He strangled slowly for several agonizing minutes. He refused a last meal, instead requesting his coffin be encased in concrete and buried 10 feet deep to prevent grave robbers. His final words, eerily calm, "Take your time. Don't bungle it." Albert Fish, born Hamilton Howard Fish in 1870, Albert's childhood was a catalog of horrors. When his father died, 5-year-old Albert was sent to St. John's Orphanage, where brutal beatings awaited. But instead of breaking him, the pain awakened something monstrous. He began associating agony with pleasure. Fish became a house painter, married Anna Mary Hoffman, and fathered 6 children. To neighbors, he seemed ordinary. Behind closed doors, he practiced extreme self-torture, inserting needles into his pelvic region while developing twisted religious delusions. His wife fled when she discovered his perversions. Between 1924 and 1932, Fish's true nature emerged. At least 3 children fell victim to his unspeakable appetites. 10-year-old Grace Budd trusted the kind old man who promised her a birthday party in 1928. Instead, he led her to an abandoned house where he strangled, dismembered, and consumed her flesh. 4-year-old Billy Gaffney and 8-year-old Frances McDonald suffered similar fates. Fish believed God commanded his cannibalistic crimes. He showed no remorse, describing his victims' final moments in sickening detail. His downfall came through his own arrogance. In December 1934, Fish sent a horrific letter to Grace Budd's mother, graphically describing how he killed and ate her daughter. Police traced the envelope to his rooming house. Despite obvious insanity, the law deemed him competent for trial. On January 16, 1936, Fish walked to Sing Sing's electric chair. He refused a last meal, reportedly viewing his execution as the ultimate passionate thrill. The first electrical surge failed due to the needles embedded in his body, creating interference. His chilling final words, "I don't even know why I'm here." Carol Cole. His nightmare began at birth in 1938. His mother Vesta dressed him in girls' clothing as punishment and forced him to witness her extramarital affairs. The humiliation and psychological abuse planted seeds of murderous rage. After a dishonorable Army discharge for theft, Cole's adult life escalated into alcoholism and violence. Multiple failed marriages ended due to his abusive nature. Each relationship failure fueled his hatred of women. From 1971 to 1980, Cole's war against women claimed at least 16 lives across multiple states. He haunted bars, seeking victims he deemed promiscuous or immoral. His method was brutally simple: befriend them, isolate them, then strangle them with his bare hands during or after intimate encounters. Cole's victims included sex workers and women he met casually. He targeted those he felt deserved death, believing he was cleansing society of moral corruption. His alcoholism triggered these violent episodes, though he remained calculating enough to evade capture for nearly a decade. Dallas police arrested him in 1980 after witnesses linked him to several murders. Initially denying involvement, Cole eventually confessed, helping solve numerous cold cases across state lines. Cole spent 5 years on death row at Nevada State Prison. On December 6, 1985, Cole became one of Nevada's first lethal injection executions. For his last meal, he requested jumbo fried shrimp, French fries, salad with Thousand Island dressing, and Boston clam chowder. His courteous final words: "Thank you, Warden. I appreciate the hospitality you have shown me." He showed no remorse, remaining calm until death claimed him. Ted Bundy. He entered the world in 1946 under a lie. For 4 years, he believed his grandparents were his parents and his mother was his sister. When the deception unraveled, it shattered something fundamental in young Ted's psyche. Intelligent and charismatic, Bundy excelled at the University of Washington, studying psychology and law. He worked political campaigns, volunteered at crisis hotlines, and maintained long relationships. This facade of normalcy made him uniquely dangerous, the devil disguised as the boy next door. Between 1974 and 1978, at least 30 young women across 7 states fell victim to Bundy's predatory charm. He perfected the art of deception, feigning injury with fake casts or crutches, appearing vulnerable to gain trust. Once isolated, he revealed his true nature, assaulting, torturing, and murdering his victims before disposing of them in remote locations. Bundy was a psychopathic sadist who collected jewelry and identification cards as trophies. He often returned to decomposing bodies for necrophilic gratification, viewing his victims as objects for his twisted pleasure. Ted Bundy was arrested twice, but each time he escaped custody. The turning point came on February 15, 1978, when a Pensacola police officer stopped him for driving a stolen car with stolen license plates. Bundy was arrested, carrying multiple IDs and stolen credit cards, and this final arrest ended his time on the run. 14 years on death row passed with Bundy desperately confessing to additional murders, trying to delay the inevitable. On January 24, 1989, Bundy was executed in Florida's electric chair. He declined a special last meal, receiving the standard prison fare instead. His final words to his attorney: "Jim and Fred, I'd like you to give my love to my family and friends." John Wayne Gacy Jr. He was born into hell in 1942. His father, an alcoholic machinist, brutalized him physically and emotionally, constantly questioning his masculinity. Yet from this trauma, Gacy emerged as a successful businessman and beloved community figure, the perfect predator hiding in plain sight. Managing KFC restaurants and later running PDM contractors, Gacy became a local Democratic Party fixture. His performances as Pogo the Clown at children's parties earned community respect. Behind the painted smile lurked something monstrous. Between 1968 and 1978, 33 young men and boys vanished into Gacy's web of death. He lured victims with construction job promises, then handcuffed them under the pretense of magic tricks. Once helpless, they endured violent assault, torture, and strangulation. 26 bodies lay buried beneath his house, while others found watery graves in nearby rivers. Gacy's repressed identity and childhood trauma fueled his need for absolute control. He targeted vulnerable youth, runaways, and troubled teens unlikely to be immediately missed. His systematic approach and public respectability allowed him to kill for a decade undetected. December 1978, 15-year-old Robert P.S.'s disappearance after mentioning Gacy's name triggered the investigation. When police obtained a search warrant, the overwhelming stench of death revealed his house of horrors. After 14 years on death row, Gacy was executed by lethal injection on May 10, 1994. He showed no remorse, spending his final years painting clown portraits he sold to collectors. His last meal, a bucket of original recipe KFC, French fries, a pound of strawberries, and Diet Coke. His defiant final words, "Kiss my..." Bobby Joe Long, his genetics cursed him from birth. Born in 1953 with Klinefelter syndrome, he developed feminine characteristics during puberty, sparking relentless bullying. His disturbed relationship with his inappropriately behaved mother further warped his psyche, planting deep-seated hatred toward women. Working as an X-ray technician, Long's life crumbled through domestic violence and divorce in 1980. A severe motorcycle accident in 1974 may have contributed to personality changes that friends noticed, a transformation from troubled man to predatory killer. In 1984, Tampa Bay became Long's hunting ground. For 8 terrifying months, he murdered at least 10 women, finding victims through classified ads or targeting sex workers. His pattern was consistent: abduction, repeated violation, murder, then disposal in remote areas. Long's rage toward women intensified with each kill. He specifically targeted those he deemed immoral, believing he was ridding society of undesirable elements. His crimes escalated in brutality, revealing complete absence of empathy. November 1984, 17-year-old Lisa McVeigh's courage ended Long's spree. After abducting and assaulting her, Long inexplicably released McVeigh. Her detailed description of her captor and his vehicle led police directly to him. November 16, 1984. Long was arrested and quickly confessed during interrogation. After 34 years on death row, Long was executed by lethal injection on May 23, 2019, at Florida State Prison. His last meal, roast beef, bacon, French fries, and soda. Long offered no apology and showed little emotion. His final words went unrecorded, but death claimed him at 6:55 p.m. Donald Henry Gaskins. He entered the world in 1933 into South Carolina. Poverty and neglect, brutal abuse by a male relative, and constant bullying for his small stature, earning him the nickname Pee-wee, forged a vicious survivor who would become known as the meanest man in America. Crime began early. At 13, Gaskins attacked a woman with an axe during robbery, earning his first reform school sentence. Prison became his education in violence, where he claimed to have killed fellow inmates to establish dominance. Between 1969 and 1975, Gaskins murdered at least 15 people, though he boasted of over 100 kills. His first confirmed victims were his own niece, Janice Kirby, and her friend. Gaskins divided his murders into coastal kills, random victims, and serious murders, personal revenge killings. His methods ranged from shooting and stabbing to drowning and poisoning. Perverse gratification, revenge, and an irresistible urge to kill drove Gaskins. He described his crimes without emotion, showing complete absence of conscience while maintaining family relationships. November 14, 1975, Associate Walter Neely confessed and led police to graves on Gaskins's property, ending his killing spree. Initially sentenced to death, his sentence was commuted when South Carolina temporarily abolished capital punishment. But while imprisoned, Gaskins murdered fellow inmate Rudolph Tyner with a bomb, earning a second death sentence. After attempting suicide earlier that day, Gaskins was revived for execution by electric chair on September 6, 1991. He declined a specific last meal, receiving standard prison fare instead. His brief, unrepentant final words, "I'll let my lawyers talk for me. I'm ready to go." Joseph Paul Franklin, born James Clayton Vaughn, Jr. In 1950, Joseph Paul Franklin transformed childhood abuse into racial hatred that would terrorize America. His white supremacist ideology drove a murder spree targeting African Americans, Jews, and interracial couples in his twisted quest for racial purity. Franklin's crime wave began in 1977, spanning the late 70s and early 80s. Armed with sniper rifles, he stalked victims across multiple states, believing he was cleansing the world of those he deemed inferior. His most notorious attacks included the attempted murders of magazine publisher Larry Flynt in 1978 and civil rights activist Vernon Jordan in 1980. Both survived but were permanently disabled. His first major conviction came for murdering Gerald Gordon in 1977. During his killing spree, Franklin committed synagogue bombings, murdered interracial couples, and conducted sniper-style assassinations from coast to coast. His methodical approach and interstate movements made him one of America's most elusive domestic terrorists. In 1980, Franklin's capture finally ended his reign of terror as investigators linked him to murders across the United States through ballistics evidence and witness testimony. Franklin spent 16 years on Missouri's death row at Potosi Correctional Center, eventually renouncing his racist views after interactions with black inmates. On November 20th, 2013, Franklin was executed by lethal injection using pentobarbital, a method new to Missouri. He declined a special last meal, receiving standard prison fare. His final words marked a complete transformation. "I renounce my racist views." Franklin blinked a few times, breathed heavily, then his chest slowly stopped heaving. Death came at 6:17 a.m., ending a violent chapter of American hatred. Gary Ray Bowles. He was born on January 25, 1962, in Clifton Forge, Virginia, into a world already marked by tragedy. His father, Frank, a coal miner, died from black lung disease 6 months before Gary's birth. His mother, Frances, raised him in Rupert, West Virginia, remarrying multiple times in search of stability that never came. Gary's second stepfather brought hell into their home, a violent alcoholic who beat Gary, his mother, and his older brother mercilessly. The abuse was relentless and savage. At 13, Gary finally snapped, fighting back and severely injuring his tormentor. When his mother chose to remain with her abuser, Gary made a fateful decision. He left home and never returned. The streets became Gary's classroom. For years, he lived homeless, surviving through sex work and petty crime. This brutal existence twisted his view of human relationships and planted seeds of murderous rage. In 1982, Gary was sentenced to 6 years for beating and brutally assaulting his girlfriend. After his release, he was back in prison by 1991 for armed robbery, serving 2 years of a 4-year sentence. March 15, 1994. Gary's killing spree began. In Daytona Beach, Florida, 59-year-old John Hardy Roberts offered Gary shelter. Gary repaid this kindness by beating and strangling Roberts, then stealing his credit card. Over the next 8 months, 5 more men died along the Cunard 95 corridor. David Jarman in Maryland, Milton Bradley in Georgia, Alverson Carter Jr. in Georgia, Albert Morris in Florida, and finally Walter Jamel J. Hinton in Jacksonville Beach. Gary's method was calculated. He worked as a sex worker, availing himself to lonely men, then strangled them and stole their credit cards. His twisted logic blamed men in same-sex relationships for his girlfriend's abortion, fueling his murderous hatred. November 22, 1994, police arrested Gary for Hinton's murder. His fingerprints and probation records had finally led investigators to him. He confessed to all 6 murders, earning him a spot on the FBI's most wanted list. In May 1996, Gary pleaded guilty to murdering Walter Hinton and received the death sentence. He was convicted of 3 additional murders in 1997. Though the Florida Supreme Court overturned his original death sentence due to prejudicial information about his hatred of men in same-sex relationships, he was sentenced to death again in 1999. Gary spent 20 years on death row at Florida State Prison. On August 22, 2019, Gary was executed by lethal injection. For his last meal, he requested 3 cheeseburgers, French fries, and bacon. Gary offered no final words as death approached. He remained silent, giving his victims' families no closure, no apology, no explanation for the terror he had unleashed along America's highways. His execution marked Florida's last until 2023. Kenneth Allen McDuff. He was born on January 24, 1946 in Rosebud, Texas, the 5th of 6 children. His mother Addie indulged him excessively, creating a monster who believed the world owed him everything. After dropping out of school, McDuff worked for his father's business while building a reputation as a violent bully. His criminal career began with burglaries in 1964, leading to his first prison sentence. Upon release, McDuff met Roy Dale Green, a partnership that would birth unspeakable horror. August 6, 1966, 3 teenagers parked at a baseball field became McDuff's first known victims. Robert Brand, Johnny Marcus Dunham, and Edna Louise Sullivan were enjoying a summer evening when evil found them. McDuff shot and killed both boys, then assaulted 16-year-old Sullivan before strangling her with a broomstick, earning him his grim nickname. McDuff and Green were swiftly arrested. McDuff received the death penalty, but fate intervened. The 1972 Furman v. Georgia Supreme Court ruling commuted his sentence to life imprisonment. After 17 years behind bars, the impossible happened. McDuff was granted parole in 1989. Within days of his release, he began killing again. Between 1989 and 1992, McDuff terrorized Texas, murdering at least 6 women. He targeted sex workers and vulnerable women he met in bars. Brenda Thompson endured torture and brutal assault before death in 1991. Regina Moore and Colleen Reed suffered similar fates as McDuff's bloodlust consumed him. In 1992, the law enforcement finally tracked McDuff to Kansas City, where he lived under an assumed name. His accomplice, Alva Hank Worley's cooperation, sealed his fate. Convicted of capital murder for killing Melissa Northrup, McDuff received his second death sentence in 1993. After 5 years on death row, McDuff was executed by lethal injection on November 17, 1998, at Texas State Prison. His last meal: fried chicken, mashed potatoes with gravy, corn, salad, and iced tea. McDuff showed little emotion as death approached. His final words went unrecorded, a fitting end for a man who gave his victims no voice in their final moments. The system that freed him had failed catastrophically, but justice finally prevailed. If you found this video valuable, hit like, subscribe, and tap the bell so you'll always be first to know when a new story drops.